Imagine a world where iconic cities like Mumbai, Miami, and Venice are no longer land dwellings but submerged underwater cities. Picture the bustling streets, the vibrant markets, the towering skyscrapers, all beneath the surface of the ocean, teeming with aquatic life. An eerie silence, replacing the once vibrant cacophony of city life. This isn't a scene from a science fiction movie. It's a real possibility that scientists around the globe are warning us about. As our planet warms, the sea levels are rising, threatening to engulf our coastal cities. These aren't mere speculations or alarmist theories. They are based on scientific data, climate models, and the harsh reality of the world we are molding. The very thought of such a future is both fascinating and terrifying, isn't it? The cityscapes we've grown accustomed to, replaced by underwater landscapes. Now, you may wonder, how could this possibly happen? Let's dive into the world of rising sea levels. Scene script. Sea levels are not just stagnant bodies of water, they are dynamic and ever-changing. Let's dive into the concept of sea level rise, a term that describes the increase in the volume of water in our planet's oceans. This isn't some far-off sci-fi scenario, it's happening right now, and its pace is picking up. So, what's causing our seas to rise? The main culprits are melting ice caps and glaciers, and thermal expansion due to global warming. Let's break that down a bit further. You see, a significant portion of our Earth is covered in ice, particularly around the polar regions. This ice, under normal conditions, maintains a balance. It melts in the warmer months and refreezes during the colder ones. But with the rising global temperatures, this balance is being disrupted. More ice is melting than refreezing. Now, you might wonder, where does this melted ice go? Well, it ends up in our oceans, increasing their volume and consequently, the sea levels. The water from melting glaciers and ice caps is like adding an extra glass of water into an already full bucket. But melting ice isn't the only factor at play here. There's also something called thermal expansion to consider. As the name suggests, it's the process by which water expands when it's heated. With the increase in global temperatures, the water in our oceans is getting warmer and expanding. This expansion contributes significantly to sea level rise. Imagine pouring hot water into a glass. You'll notice that the water level in the glass rises, not just because you're adding more water, but also because the existing water expands as it heats up. The same principle applies to our oceans on a much larger scale. The rising sea levels might not make daily headlines, but they are a serious concern. They are not just transforming our planet's geography, but also threatening coastal cities and islands, including Mumbai. The rising sea levels are a silent alarm, signaling the health of our planet. This isn't just about water lapping at our doorsteps. It's about the future of our planet and the generations to come. Let's heed this alarm before it's too late. Our planet is heating up, and the rising temperatures are doing more than just raising a sweat. While most of us might think of sea level rise as a slow, almost imperceptible process, the truth is far more dramatic. It's a worldwide phenomenon backed by a trio of powerful forces: global warming, the melting of polar ice caps, and thermal expansion. Each of these elements plays a formidable role in the swelling volume of our oceans. Let's start with global warming. This term refers to the long-term increase in Earth's average temperature. When these temperatures rise, they don't just make our summers hotter, they also heat up our oceans, causing seawater to expand and occupy more space, a process known as thermal expansion. It's a bit like heating a pot of water on the stove. As the water heats up, it expands, and if there's too much of it, it begins to spill over the sides of the pot. Now imagine that pot is our planet, and the water is our oceans. As the Earth heats up, the oceans expand, and the only place for them to go is onto our land. This is thermal expansion at work, and it's responsible for about half of the observed sea level rise. But that's not all. As the temperatures continue to rise, they also cause the polar ice caps to melt. You see, the North and South poles are home to vast quantities of ice. As this ice melts, it adds even more water to our oceans. And just like the water in our hypothetical pot, the extra water has nowhere to go but onto our land. In essence, the causes of sea level rise come down to a mix of warming temperatures, expanding seawater, and melting ice. Each factor feeds into the other, creating a cycle that is difficult to break and impossible to ignore. As our planet warms, the sea rises inch by inch, threatening to engulf our cities. Imagine waking up one day to find your city transformed into an underwater realm. This might sound like a plot from a science fiction movie, but it's a looming reality many of our world's cities and island nations face, thanks to the rising sea levels. Let's take a journey around the globe, highlighting some of the most vulnerable locations. First stop, the vibrant city of Miami in the United States. Built on porous limestone, the city is like a sponge, soaking up the rising waters. With sea levels predicted to rise by 1 to 4 feet by the end of the century, Miami's survival is on a ticking clock. Next, we sail to the city of dreams, Mumbai, in India. Home to over 20 million people, Mumbai is particularly vulnerable due to its low-lying coastal areas. With the Arabian Sea's waters encroaching upon it, Mumbai could be partially submerged by 2050. Our next destination is the picturesque archipelago of the Maldives, the lowest-lying nation on Earth. With more than 80% of its land less than 1 meter above sea level, the Maldives is precariously perched on the front lines of climate change. We then move to Venice, the city of canals in Italy. Venice has been fighting a losing battle against rising sea levels for centuries. If the current trends persist, the city might become uninhabitable within this century. Finally, we head to the Pacific, where small island nations like Kiribati and Tuvalu are facing an existential threat. These nations are barely above sea level, and a rise of just a few feet could wipe them off the map completely. The list doesn't end here. Alexandria in Egypt, Guangzhou in China, New York City in the United States. The list of cities at risk is long, and the clock is ticking. The future of these cities hangs in the balance as the seas continue to rise. A world with submerged cities is not just a plot for a science fiction movie, it's a potential reality. It's a world where the skyline of cities like Mumbai is redrawn, not by architects, but by the relentless rise of sea levels. That's a world we could be heading towards if sea levels continue to rise. We've all seen the dystopian films where a submerged world is inhabited by survivors in makeshift floating homes. But the truth could be far grimmer. With current urban infrastructure, a submerged world would be unlivable. Cities would become underwater ghost towns, their once bustling streets eerily quiet. The infrastructure we rely on for our everyday lives, roads, power lines, sewage systems, would be destroyed. This would lead to a cascade of problems. Power outages, water contamination, and a lack of access to essential services would become the new normal. But the impact of a submerged world would not just be felt by those living in these cities. The economic consequences would ripple out across the globe. Major cities are economic powerhouses, driving global trade and finance. Submerging them would mean losing these engines of growth, leading to economic instability and potentially even global recession. The environmental impact would be equally devastating. Flooding would cause toxic materials from industrial sites to leak into the sea, causing widespread pollution. Marine life would suffer as their habitats are contaminated. And let's not forget the human cost. Millions of people would be displaced, losing their homes and livelihoods. The psychological toll of such a catastrophe is unimaginable. The future of a submerged world is not a pleasant one. It's a world of loss of homes, loss of economic stability, loss of biodiversity. It's a world where the map is constantly changing, not because of human progress, but because of human inaction. But this future is not inevitable. It's a future we can prevent. We have the knowledge and the technology to slow down and potentially even reverse sea level rise. All we need is the will to act. The clock is ticking, and every inch the sea rises brings us closer to this reality. The fate of our cities is not yet sealed. We have the power to change the course of this tide. Let's not forget that we are the architects of our own reality, and the rising tides are no exception. Our actions, our choices, our habits, they all play a pivotal role in this global phenomenon. It's true, the seas are rising, but so can our efforts to combat this. Through understanding, we find responsibility. The changes we need aren't just about grand gestures or sweeping reforms, they're about everyday choices. It's about reconsidering our consumption, rethinking our waste, and realigning our values with the health of our planet. The magnitude of our impact may feel overwhelming, but remember, each step counts. Every effort, no matter how small, is a ripple that can turn the tide. The future of our planet is in our hands. We can either watch the sea levels rise or take action to secure our future.